Another point of clarification that I wanted to get across, though, to the audience that this channel has basically gathered thus far and hasn't bolted on me is just that aspirationally, I don't really want to be a YouTuber, and if my goal in life were to ultimately become super successful on YouTube and to build a channel with an enormous audience that brought in the money and brought in tons and tons of revenue to me. Um, honest, I don't really have a plan for that. I don't know what my route forward would be either. Idea wise, I guess, if I were to chew on it, I could think maybe I should probably like play Final Fantasy 11 on stream with my audience a bit more often, and then while I'm playing, talk about my perspective on politics instead of just droning on and beating on about politics without playing something to keep people entertained. Multiple streams of because people are ADHD as fuck and they want more than one focus. So maybe give them more that. That would be one idea I could toss around there. What do you think? Do you think that would help? Audience, if you're out there, whoever's out there, do you think that might help the channel somewhat? But yeah, I don't really think that I will ever ultimately be a YouTube partner and able to make money off this venture. So I haven't really ultimately wanted to turn it into a channel that was trying, hard to be like a channel that was profitable. I think that, like my intention with this channel for like the longest time was more like I guess you could say that like I said that I wanted to vomit my perspective onto the web, but I mean it's more just that I wanted to be able to have a place on the web where I could express my perspective and my angle on like current events and things that were happening in the real world, and you know um to comment on politics and produce videos about my perspective about politics basically, and also to be a source of material that other people might find like educational about politics. And because I do know a lot about the particular topic now because of the fact that I mean, what do you think I spend all my time doing but reading articles about politics? I mean, like, and consuming them and that sort of thing. And I know the rest of you people have real jobs and that you have to work your ass off in corporate America, but I think that what kind of drives me a little bit batty is just the mentality that you know having how do I put this? Having a real job and having done things and slaved away in the corporate world makes you more your angle on politics more valid than mine, and that you as a person, because you're one of the worker bees, have more to say that is valid about politics than I do. Like I don't see how this logic that people seem to be trying to throw at me really holds up under scrutiny, to be entirely honest with you, because it's like there's this mentality, like I'm saying, like that is being hurled at me, which is just you have to go out there in the world and do something useful for other people and earn people over before they'll consider the possibility that you might have something valid to say or listen to you and your angle on things. And it's like I see, like, what I see and what I think is just that good logic is good logic, even if it comes from a fucking political nobody, and somebody that hasn't, and somebody who admittedly has a life that lacks a lot of personal accomplishment and such. I mean, this is just not a valid reason for like dismissing somebody the way that the man that I'm so frustrated by today, seems to think is a valid reason to do so. I mean, and he might fire back, well, who are you to basically think to tell me that this isn't a valid angle on things? And I just have to be like fair, but from where I'm standing and from where I'm sitting, it isn't a valid. Like there's no there's no truth to that. And I think that what's really frustrating is that he dismissed and shot down something that I said to him and uh, pointed out by just saying that it was a biased source, as if, saying that it was a biased source, like, ultimately was like the ultimate debunking of what I had to say, and like that just owned me. And this is an attitude that unfortunately I find is way too prevalent and common, and I would make a very short video in response to that mentality and have said very little about it if it wasn't so prevalent and common. But the truth of the matter is that this is an attitude that people take all the time and that I've had to deal with, for a very long time. I used to try to back my arguments up with people by linking them to Think Progress articles and, to add evidence that my angle on things was the truth by, linking to Think Progress articles. And I would commonly get a response of just quote unquote LOL Think Progress, that liberal rag, which I found to be, observationally incredibly pathetic because, the archive of the articles that, are, that have been on, the site for like, the longest bloody time. I mean, if it wasn't a debate, but CNN's 7 hour. So, like, let's look at one of these articles, like, like, so that you can see that that their angle on things isn't so incredibly unsupported by evidence as people acted like in response to all that. I'm looking for one that is like one of those like claims that they have to make. So, planning a 2020 LGBT forum. Here are some issues advocates say the candidates should address. GOP candidate has a pretty hypocritical excuse for why he's down in polls. And that's, I mean, like, it's something that needs evidence, though. Is backed by something, that it's a controversial take that you'd have to back with evidence. So I'm looking through, here to try to find something like that, and god damn it, it's gonna have to disable no script so that and then reload the damn page because obviously show more stories is dependent on some kind of script. Right. House Democrats turn their attention to Donald Trump's involvement in hush money payments, and it's an old article, but I mean, these are really, I mean, I'm looking, and there's no, not this one in particular. Universal background checks might keep him from arming. I'm looking for it. My dark differences between Democrats. I'm really struggling to find something that really illustrates the point, at the moment, but bear with. I will put this on pause. Okay, and I mean, this is just such a terrible argument, so let's go into this. This is an old Think Progress article. July was the hottest month ever, right? The dismissiveness that people had to engage in to arrive at LOL Think Progress, and that was a valid reason to dismiss, is such a silly bullshit argument, because it's like, consider the source. Well, then, they would say that, but it's kind of like saying, like colleges that dismiss Wikipedia out of hand when, all you have to do when Wikipedia provides all the sources like off-site. So, you don't trust Think Progress? Well, here it is straight from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and government. You know, like, there's a better source than, a site that, you'd say is a biased source of information. I mean, like, this is the government. It's about as neutral as it can get. It backs their article up. It's all their information and where they got it from and what they're reacting to. And what like Think Progress usually was just a site that basically looked at sites like this and then added maybe a little bit of commentary to it, and that was really all they usually tended to do when they put their shit out there onto the web about this stuff, which was all backed up by like actual data from the government. And you would get people that would just sort of like LOL Think Progress And I make this point because people do this all the time. It's like they'll just dismiss something and say, that's a biased source of information. Well, now you know that from what I've just demonstrated, even a biased source of information, admittedly that was in the tank for the Democratic Party, can provide factual information to people that can be verified and checked against fact checking. You know, Think Progress was admittedly a biased website. That is true, and it was partisan propaganda, or a partisan, it was a partisan website that was pushing a partisan agenda in what it was putting out there. It was pushing a progressive agenda in its articles, which is what it tended to do, but it backed itself up with factual information. So the source that it came from may have had, admittedly, a progressive bias, but the information that was presented in the article was factual, in spite of the fact that the article and the website it came from were biased. Now, I don't know why people don't understand this. I don't understand the LOL, your source is biased argument. This is, you know, um, and not an intellectually honest way to dismiss somebody's, arguments and dismiss somebody's, whatever facts they are presenting. This is not how you get around them. It's lazy and hackneyed, and it's basically a way of saying you're not worth even spending the time on to consider the source and properly digest the information in such a way to actually offer a counter argument in such a way that on the hierarchy of disagreement, refutes the central point of the article that you've just linked. I want to take the easy way out of this hierarchy of disagreement, and I want you to see this, like in very brief summary of that, what they've done is basically just it's a ad hominem basically. They're responding to the characteristics or authority of the writer without addressing the substance of the argument. And that's all, saying that the source is biased does. It doesn't actually refute the central point of the source. It doesn't find the mistake and explain why it's mistaken with quotes. It doesn't contradict and then back up that contradiction with reason or supporting evidence. It doesn't state that the opposing case with little or no supporting evidence. It doesn't even criticize the tone of the writing without addressing the substance of the argument. It's basically, just you are an asshat, for the most part, or attacks the characteristic, it just attacks the authority of the source, and it doesn't actually address the argument, of that the source actually makes. And this is a very hackneyed and lazy way to deal with somebody that is just trying to make a point to you, politically speaking. And it's not a like I'm not saying it's not a valid, critique. Like what I'm trying to say is that this is not an intellectually honest critique of somebody. Like there's nothing honest about it. It's an incredibly dishonest tactic. If you want to actually present anything that I would personally take seriously, then you need to refute the central point of the article in question if I link you something. And if you can't do that, you haven't argued against it at all.